Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Corrective Lenses podcast. This is an offshoot of County Seat, a program that we did for a number of years about local issues. And our guest on this episode is a guy I have wanted to talk to, seems like forever, but I've really only known him closely for a year or so. But boy, we hit it off the first time I met him. I'm really pleased to introduce you to Layne Bangerter. And
Yes,
you
sir.
are a very conservative person who understands why this country was built, the inspiration behind it, and what we're supposed to be doing. The anomaly of this is that you've spent a good 30, 40 years working inside the belly of the beast of the administrative state. How do you reconcile that?
Yeah, I never meant to be in the federal government as long as I just wanted to live life and hunt and fish and camp and chase my wife around. But I ended up being in the federal system for a long time. Great to be with you, Chad. I feel like we're longtime friends. You forgot our time in Vietnam in that foxhole.
Oh, yeah.
You got me
Yes.
through. So
I thought it was the other way around.
I appreciate that. And yeah, what we've been handed in America is amazing. It's fallen in our laps. And the Constitution, all of our individual liberties are amazing to me. And they're under pressure. We've seen it recently under COVID. We see things stripped, people canceled, cancel culture, and everything imaginable happening in America. So I'm very much a defender of the Constitution and individual liberties. I don't want to be told much, but I believe in the rule of law.
Right.
And we don't need to be told much because we're going to behave correctly. But I got my eyes wide open, and I do it for appreciation of the biggest advantage I had in my life was great parents. They were lower middle class parents. They did okay in life, but nobody had money. But I just had amazing parents. As I say, that's my only advantage. That is a huge advantage. So you look at America, and is it in decline or is it on uptick? And we're in a little bit of decline. And it's this greatest generation that Tom Brokaw hypothesized that this generation born approximately between 1914 and 1926 was his greatest generation of all civilization. That's my parents. They came through World War II, and with such skill. My father was a plowboy and became a bomber pilot, and that opened up a whole vision of the world is awesome, flight and leadership. Mm-hmm. And they then got that behind them and built the American dream and handed it to our generation. And I say that we're kind of mediocre, getting from great golden parents, but we're mediocre. But that's the struggle, to make sure we love and preserve our liberties and this great American concept that I love so much.
Well, Layne, the American West is about water. It's about land. It's about stewardship, and a lot of physical nature. Your portfolio is a really interesting portfolio because you've been with Fish and Wildlife at a federal level. You've been with the EPA at a federal level. You've worked in the United States Senate as a liaison on a lot of issues, and you worked for the Department of Agriculture, all within that period of time that you were in service of the federal government. I think working for Senator Crapo was the biggest stretch, wasn't it?
Right. Yeah, Senator Crapo gave me great voice, great liberty to speak on policy. His policy was not hard to track. And we had a great bond, and we were a very effective team working for him. And so he gave me an opportunity to launch into politics deeper. This fish, wildlife, land, and water, the natural resources, are what drives me. And it drives the planet, actually, when you think about it. Land, wars are fought over land, over energy, everything, all of our food. But water being number one is so vital, such a hot topic. And so there's hair-splitting detailed policies on all those. And they're important globally. But here in the Intermountain West and the United States, they're vital, but not just here. There's water issues, in Cape May, New Jersey, to the Great Lakes, California, and certainly the arid West here. So that's been my life, and that's what drives me, is my love of the natural resources, the wild places of this country.
Well, water is an issue across the country. Would you argue that it's quality of water that's an issue more in the East, and availability of water in the West that drives this conversation more?
Correct. Yeah, they have all kinds of problems with nutrient loading in the East. Mm-hmm. Issues with water, clean drinking water systems. Flint, Michigan was a real faux pas under Democrat administration. And so that is true. Some places, Florida has too much water. They pump water off their grasslands where we pump it on our fields. And so a lot of things come into play that regulate water. The Endangered Species Act, the Clean Water Act, and a lot of federal law. And there's a struggle between who owns the water, because we all want to see our rivers running. So it's been a struggle of what waters belong to the United States, which waters belong to the states. The water I'm using on my ranch is for, it's the state of Utah they preside over it, and then they parcel it out to private property owners, and then we leave such water in the rivers for the purposes of flowing. It's because we do love these rivers. And so it's our stewardship to take care of the land for the next generation, because that's where our experiences are going to come from for our grandchildren. The abundant flocks and herds, the elk and the deer and the livestock and the grouse and the pheasants. It's going to depend on us to pass that on to our posterity.
So I was just yesterday in a conversation where we were talking about, or it was part of a conversation, and the topic was talking about how well we have conserved water in the West, and that we should be patted on the back. There was no mention made of the fact that we have the potential to generate water by managing our land better. But I've heard scientists talk about it for years, saying that if we treat the land better, it will yield more water to us on a consistent long-term basis. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely agree. You just take pinyon juniper. You can view every juniper as a great big pump that is sucking 100 gallons a day, creating a pretty sterile range bed. Mm-hmm. And where they're chaining juniper, all of a sudden you're seeing the springs reemerge, the rivers flow better, the groundwater, the surface water, which are conjoined, they're connected. One affects the other. People don't realize that, but they're conjoined. They do better, removing all those pumps. So there's a lot of things that humans can do, because we're part of the environment, we're part of the natural ecosystem, that still leave the land very wild and rough. Mm-hmm. But there's some things we can do mechanically to treat things so that we're not having these horrific, catastrophic fires. We're having better water quality, better forest quality. Absolutely, the sky's the limit, Chad. We can manage the land better, but yet leave it wild and untrammeled so that we don't look like a manicured Germany. We don't want that. We love the ruggedness of the United States. We can do much better. We can keep improving on everything we're doing on the private land, state land, and the federal portfolio, which we sit in the state of Utah. Most of the land is federal.
Yeah, 67%.
Yeah.
So, 2/3 of it, it's kind of interesting. The federal agencies have more control over the land than the governor of the state.
That's true.
And it's kind of, when you look at the BLM director and say, okay, he's got about 3 million more acres in his portfolio than everything the governor can touch. And that's a little telling, really.
It is a little telling, but it can be okay. We can make this system work. As we see, what I've appreciated in my life, and where my greatest, most formative experiences have happened in those wild places, in the wilderness lands throughout the United States, following my father on horseback, and also on private land. But That's where a lot of my memories were generated and my thinking generated on the federal system. The state lands, they're okay. They're very good too. Private property, it was always a struggle. Who's the best steward of the land, private, state, or federal? So it's very arguable if private property owners now, I see a lot of them, I don't think they're great stewards of the land, but they're entitled to do what they're doing. It seems to be building more houses.
They used to be.
They used to, hands down, when I was in college, it was not an issue. Private property owners dominated the stewardship. They took better care of the land than the federal government. Now I don't know if that's the case. And not saying that I don't have issues. I don't think the federal government can improve on what they're doing.
Right.
We're just now developing. We're cutting. We're subdividing. It's happening throughout the whole United States, but the Rocky Mountain, Intermountain West is booming. Your biggest growth states are, when your biggest growth states are Arizona, Idaho, and Utah, through that corridor. Montana's growing. You're seeing the S Lazy H, the big ranches cut up. You know, there's lots of songs. Listen to the song The S Lazy H. And that's the story of the West, where that's why we need to keep rural Americans who are making a living off, whether they're with the wool grower industry, the sheep industry, or cow-calf operators, which is most of the rural America and farming. We got to keep them on the land. Otherwise, they're going to carve it up because you're economically driven there.
Well, you spent a number of years ranching up in the forsaken part of the caldera of Idaho in Melba. I mean, of all places, it's not even on the Rand McNally map. You've got to zoom in to find it. And water was a huge issue up there. In fact, I did a county seat show, a story with some of your neighbors and colleagues about how they were being chased out of their water by environmental groups that didn't really have anything to do with it, but prevailed in the court cases.
Oh, huge fights. That was just a stock water case. People losing their ranches practically over this. Because of the federal government suing them on a stock water right. Goodness gracious, we've seen all these fights, which have, driven people back and injured rural Americans economically. The problem is our beloved federal government has become a behemoth, and we fund it to such an extent that sometimes the managers, the executive branch, gets out of control and they get up to mischief, as I say. And so they pick on people like the families you're thinking of, and this government has become too big. We just passed a $3 trillion increased budget today. Ronald Reagan argued over an $800 billion deficit, thought that was sinful. And now I don't even know, can't keep track. It's 36 trillion.
Yeah, it's up.
So the federal government is enormous. I love my country. I love the Trump administration, as you know, but the government's big. It's hard for any one person to control entirely, but the system needs to be a little bit smashed up because we can do better. We'll remake it into something much better. We have that opportunity, and we need to do that, and we owe it to the people that handed it to us.
Well, I mean, if you take like you were mentioning, and I felt sorry for those guys because not only did the federal government come after them on the water, in the process of defending themselves, they should have been able for compensation, and the environmental agencies got recompensated for the legal fees when they should have, based on what the Equal Access to Justice Act was originally about, and they ended up on the short end of it. It seems like we're trying to kill off the small American farmer and rancher, and yet, in my mind, I think the diversity of ownership is critically important for our long-term future. I don't want Kellogg's owning everything.
Yeah, pick a major corporation that's buying land. They could own everything, or we could keep these families on the land, and that's our goal. I know that's President Trump's goal. Many of these acts that were well intended, like Equal Access to Justice, EJA, the Endangered Species Act, National Environmental Policy Act. They were all intended to be for good purposes, but they've also swollen with the bureaucracy. Their reach has come with the cost. Critical habitat for a species is painted quickly. You have a short time frame to designate critical habitat. So we're going to designate the whole area. And then we have the federal government creating special areas, monuments, areas of critical environmental concern, roadless. We're having all this action, layered management, layered regulation, above and beyond the Wilderness Act and things like that.
Right.
That, we appreciate a lot of those areas and the functions, but those acts that were well-intended have gone rogue.
Well, completely.
And in many instances.
I mean, you tick things off there, like NEPA and EJA. Of course, we know that's been a mess ever since they started. Yeah. But you've Clean Water Act, all these different things, and to me, they're just alarms of regulatory slavery. I think is the best way to say it. Is that they put us as the American populace at such a disadvantage, even though there's supposed to be an advantage for us. That it's driving people off the land. No wonder developers are grabbing up ranches and farmlands. It's just too hard to do anymore.
Yeah, people, if you don't allow the rural America to stay on the land, they are going to split it up. They're going to go where the money is. You retrench to your own self-survival, your own self-interest. They have to. And it's sad to see that broken up, and we need that. You and I have seen that in our day. There used to be, hundreds and hundreds of 80 cow dairies in Utah. I'd say, hundreds, maybe thousands. Those can't even exist anymore. They're all 12,000 cow dairies. And they're still run by families, but some of them are corporate. But we're just getting it on a whole different scale. But the goal ought to be produce strength in every commodity, keep the people on the land. People love the land. They want to stay here. They want to pay their bills. They want to raise their family. They want to feed their family. And that's probably the best thing that we can do to protect rural America. It should be a real focus for government to make sure that it's not done away with in any way. Now,
your position with the USDA in Idaho during Trump term number 1 was basically the in charge of the rural development.
Right.
You had funds and loans and grants and stuff at your disposal.
Right.
Do you feel that you had a chance to be effective in the world of regulation?
It was the proper role. Is this the proper role of government? Yes. That was taking care of our people in real time. You'd have a small rural community with their water system goes down. This happens all the time. Mm-hmm. We could go in, the federal government could go in and remedy that. We could even give them a grant. We're helping our own people, and because water, you don't have, and water treatment facilities, housing, things like that. You don't have good labor in rural America if you don't have affordable housing.
True.
So all those things I felt like I always have that metric. Is it the proper role of government? And that agency is very lean and very effective, and it's what we do for our own people, and I love it, yeah.
Do you think that there are areas within the USDA that aren't the proper role of government?
Everybody knows that in USDA and any agency, there are many agencies, offices, many things that are not vital to the original intent of the proper role of government, which was pretty limited. Keep the roads open, keep the ports open, keep the rivers going and commerce, mm-hmm. and protect life. That's the most important function of government, keep you alive. And then these other special liberties of make sure the government doesn't bust into your house without cause and take over your house and let you say what you want, let you worship the way you please. And so the focus ought to be of the federal government to prop up those principles. Everything else should actually fall to the states constitutionally.
Mhm.
All other functions should be, carried out by the states. But we haven't lost that battle. We keep fighting it. We keep saying, hey, we're here. We need relevancy. And so that's who has the power, who was given the power constitutionally. The federal government, certainly,
So,
the states, and the several tribes. We cannot leave them out. They are us.
yeah, let's talk about that. You have a very interesting perspective about the sovereign nature of the Native American tribes. Fill us in on that a little bit.
Well, Jefferson penned it that way. Everyone was in agreement. The tribes are special. They're American, and they're part of us. We have a fatherly responsibility, a fiduciary responsibility, the federal government of the tribes. The states don't have a role. But the Constitution spelled all that out. And the Native tribes they have their own subset of problems, but they're fantastic. They serve in the military at the highest rate of any ethnic group. And you could see the show, The Wind Talkers, Navajo Nation. Perfect way to break the Japanese code. There had been no Navajos leave Arizona or Utah, and it was not a written language. So we love them as Americans that they are, Native Americans. We're also Native. We're European descent. I'm fourth or fifth generation. So that's fair. We came, but my forefathers came to southern Utah and had a special relationship with the Indians. They were sent specifically to be missionaries to the Indians to make sure they weren't trampled upon by this massive migration that was coming. At the same time, the U.S. government was setting up reservation systems, separating the tribes, basically separating the tribes from the tribes because they were warring against each other. The Utes were dominant against, the Paiutes down here, and the Hopis and the Navajos had a hard time getting along. And so they had certain lands that the U.S. government finally just had to define. These are your reservation lands. And since we are your parent, everybody had to sign in at like Bosca Rotunda. You had to sign in. They designate what tribe you were and send you there. So we hope the best for them, but they are us. We got to take care of them.
See, that's an aspect I had never considered before, is that the reason that we isolated and put tribes in blotches of land or little pads, polygons separated from each other, was not because we were giving them what was left over. We were trying to keep them from each other. Is that?
Yeah, no disrespect, but they were purging each other.
Yeah.
The Sioux purged the Pawnee to get where they were, and others. So they were very warlike when the Europeans, found them. They were warlike against each other. Therefore, they were called tribes because this is my tribe, that's your tribe. My tribe hates your tribe. So that's what my grandfathers and uncles stepped into down here. And they kept the peace, and they took care of them. So I'm proud of that portion of my heritage for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You could almost write a book about that, because
I could almost write a book.
I mean, it's a fascinating perspective that a lot of people, just including myself, just don't even have.
Well, it's history. It's fact. That's what I like dealing in as fact.
Yeah.
You don't have to make this stuff up. But we live in a great age, and there's so much we can do to keep this American dream alive, to keep world peace is a challenge. And everything's complex in this world we have.
So there's a current trend going, and in the Trump administration #2, a very big focus on us becoming completely self-sustaining, and some people think that it's an attempt to become isolationist again, and we need to make all our own stuff so we don't have to deal with the world, or we could tell them to go do whatever it is that we want to tell them to do, and that we don't need them anymore. What's your take on that?
That's not at all the Trump doctrine for making America great and being America first. He does mean we need to produce every commodity. We need to make cotton, honey, wool, wheat, and steel and timber. We we need to have everything, but we certainly want to trade. He wants to trade internationally. This is a president that has more foreign policy experience and friendships that are so deep, and I mean for decades, the people he's known from the United Emirates and Saudi Arabia go deep into his past. He knows the politics of the world, so he is happy to trade for Saudi oil, even though we don't need it, but we're going to buy it. This is putting my words in his mouth. We're going to buy it because you're such good people to us, all the time, and they help keep the peace in that Middle Eastern world. And that's his intent of his last trip there, to show that we're really going to work for them. But the concept is be strong in everything. We are doggone America. we should dominate.
Heck
and then
yeah.
we will lift all boats. This is Trump doctrine. We will raise all boats. If you're kind to us, if you're a bad neighbor like Mexico, we will chastise. Like Mexico's been, I say they're great people, but been a very terrible neighbor on the border situation, to let millions and millions of people and seemingly not lift a finger has been criminal. But we still love Mexico. But so that's his point, not isolationist. He is a global thinker. President Trump is, and the United States can't really function in an isolated fashion. But we should not say that we're second to anybody, and we should use our leadership position to raise everybody in the cause of liberty and maximize freedom and individual liberties. Freedom's not spiritual. It's just a thing, like a Chinese worker can go home and go to the bathroom and eat.
Mm-hmm.
That's just freedom. But they don't have any individual liberties. They cannot say what they want. You and I are saying what we want. They're not allowed to. That's spiritual. This right to life, to live, and to say what we want, and have certain protections, to own a firearm, is, to me, very spiritual. And that's what the fight's all about, is those individual liberties that we love so much.
So you think what tyranny is afraid of is more individual liberty than actual freedom?
Yeah, tyranny is a threat. Ultimately, when you're in a scary situation, the strong man in the room is the one with the gun in his hand.
Well, that's true.
And if the wrong person has the gun and really, really is a tyrannical person, you got a dangerous situation, and your liberties are gone at that moment. So the purpose of the Constitution was to not have those situations, and to have a vehicle when you're in them, how to redress them.
So would you say that the most dangerous situation is one man with a gun in a room, and that three men with a gun in a room is much safer if they don't know each other?
That could be, yeah. Now it's not even about the guy with the gun. Now it's who's controlling the F-16, who's driving the aircraft carrier, who's in that tank. It gets down to that. President Biden literally said, you can have your AR-15s, but I have an F-16. That was a threat to the American people.
I was going to say,
we've had a president say that in our day. I mean, doggone that. So it gets beyond that. It gets to be this great peacemaker, President Trump. His ultimate goal is, you do not ever go to war with Russia. Yeah. Do commerce with them. We'll maximize liberty if we do that, but we can't justify everything Russia does. We can't right every wrong Russia does. You don't ever go to war with China. We are all nuclear powers, and we can have global warming if we do. We could have like 5,000 degree global warming. And Trump sees that.
It's a little hot out here today.
It's a little, I believe in that type of global warming. So he thinks these senseless foreign wars. Think of his experience, my experience. We grew up very anxious for my brother getting drafted in Vietnam. He did go in the Guard, but my brother-in-law had both legs blown off in Vietnam, 19 years old. He introduced me to my wife. I'm indebted to him forever. But we saw this, and I was in elementary school, and then we've had these senseless foreign wars. We've also had righteous foreign wars. I'd say World War I, World War II, definitely righteous wars, and there's time for that. There's time for there's a season for all things.
Yeah, but
so
we went into those wars.
Some of these wars are senseless, bloody, expensive to the treasury and life, foreign wars, and Trump hates it. I hate it. And that's what he's trying to end. We just had Tim Walz, campaigning on Ukraine must win this war. And I'm going, why? Let's just stop fighting. Stop this war.
This is a good answer, Layne. Why?
Why?
Yeah.
Of what benefit to Ukraine or Russia or the United States is this war? Trump just says, end the war. We'll negotiate something. But we got to learn a lesson being on the planet. And I really love Pete Hegseth this week. We had the Secretary of Defense talking about the strength of the United States, but then talking about his creator driving him. That we're only here for a little while. And he said, we're only going to live on this planet a little while. We should live in peace. But we're ready to, like President Trump has said to Iran, you're beautiful people. You have culture, education. Don't make me bomb the hell out of you. Quit exporting terrorism. Quit supporting these groups. Quit threatening the United States of America. Quit threatening our friends. And so it's a complex world.
It really
a lot of fun things to deal with.
It really is. And I want to kind of circle back onto the continent itself and talk about forests. This is a big issue. I know you've mentioned it before, and we've talked about it before. Our forests are, they have so much to do with water. They have so much to do with wildlife. All these things that you've talked about that are important to you. How did we get to a point where the high elevation forests in the West are in such terrible shape?
They're just in really bad shape. We're not going to get to treat all of them, but we should treat some of them, whether it's, chewing them up or controlled burns. There's a lot we can do to manage the land better. On the I suppose you're talking about the federal system.
Yeah.
It could be managed much better, and we should just simply follow the law, which is the Multiple Use Sustained Yields Act allows us to do a lot for recreation, restoration, conservation, timber, grazing, mining. That's the law. We're cutting about 600 million board feet off our national forests.
Right.
We used to cut 12 billion board feet, so now we're trading that for catastrophic fires, which creates poor water quality, poor soil quality. And so we can do much better on that. On private land side too, California, some of that is very avoidable. The biomass is the problem, and it affects private property owners like me that adjoin the federal lands, because our insurance rates could go up because they say you're surrounded by a lot of growth there. Could burn that cabin down of yours. So it just we can do more, but we want, and we can in that keep wild lands, land very wild, not Europeanized, manicured. We want the rough, wild areas still, but we can, for water quality and water abundance, it would help if we do more of that.
So right now, about 25% of the forest, the high mountain forest land, are in critical status, being highly exposed to potential catastrophic wildfire. And we have 188 million acres total across the system of forested land. So that's, we probably need to treat 50 million acres of land, and we don't have much time to do it. How are we going to turn that corner? Because we have pretty much eliminated I mean, the only tool that's really left in the toolbox right now, because we don't forest like we used to, a lot of the land is in such bad shape, it's not commercially viable. It's not the right kind of wood. How do we stop it from destroying us?
Not to mention we're losing our infrastructure. If we did have good quality timber, the mills have left. That's what we cannot have happen anymore. They've left these small rural communities. We don't have infrastructure to handle the timber to make it into a 2x6 or anything. But we have the authority to do exactly what you're speaking about through lots of bills that have been passed, the Healthy Forest Restoration Act. We have the money, we have the funding, and the legal mechanism to treat more lands for the benefit of fish, wildlife, livestock, so that we can have these great abundant flocks and herds that we love so much and make the land way healthier. What we're seeing when we treat the land is so incredible as a biologist and a range scientist that we can do more of it.
Well, what I'm finding, though, is that there are people in the bureaucracy themselves, both state and at federal level, who I don't think take seriously the problem. They're aware it's a serious problem, but I don't think that they're very genuine in really wanting to solve it and solve it now. I think they're just going, well, we can do 10 million acres a year, and that's the best we can do, and we'll just do it. In the meantime, the world's going to burn up around them. While there are technological alternatives, but they resist them because they don't understand them. And I'm mentioning something that you and I are both familiar with, and that's the work of this Mike Saparis and his 106. Right. It's just right here in Utah, and he's really done something brilliant. But I've talked to field biologists about it, and they don't like it. And yet the scientists, the guys who are doing the research studies on wildlife, they think this is pretty cool stuff. And
what Mike Saparis is doing on private property, high elevation, 10,000 feet, is so exemplary and so beneficial for the water and the wildlife and everything like that. What we need in charge is not the status quo. The system that's come out of the 1960s, really, and educated 60s and 70s, they didn't have it all right. I mean, they didn't have all the answers. We need change agents that are going to change the system, bust up the system some, and not do things the same old way. Don't just draw a paycheck. We need action on these lands. We need activity. But not on all of it. We need it to be wild. But if we got to change the people and go with the correct biology, and biology, there's biology both sides clashing, but the correct way is if you let a place become old, overgrown, it becomes sterile. As a diverse environment is an indicator of stability. A monolithic, monoculture environment is indicator of instability, really. So you want diversity equals stability. And so that's the goal. I believe the intent of the law is the Multiple Use Sustained Yields Act to create great diversity. And you're going to have human arms and human activity, treating the land and correcting that, getting rid of some of these non-native species or the native species like juniper that have just exploded, the lodgepole pine, and get more aspen regeneration. That's what you're going to see. It'll affect our water, our underground water, our rivers. It'll benefit all that.
Well, I also think that getting that, because the conifers themselves, and this is true of junipers as well, they're very toxic. And so even though they take up all the water, if that's not bad enough, what they drop on the ground to surround them keeps anything from growing. And if you go out just up the road a ways to where you've got a juniper forest, you walk under those trees if you can get under them, and you'll see there's nothing there.
It's very sterile.
Yeah,
it's just sterile, and the soil's not doing well. And then again, where they treat that, wow, it's quite a change. You have abundance of habitat for all manner of species that couldn't even occur there. So you see them coming in to use it. I'm thinking of sage grouse. I'm thinking of woodpeckers. I'm thinking of everything will come in and use that. It will create stability if we would actually do some of our cultivating in this Garden of Eden we were handed.
Oh, that's it. That's actually a very good way to put it. Are we going to be able to save ourselves, because we have so many special interests that are fighting against this? It's the special interests, I think, are what shut down guys that come up with these innovative, disruptive ways, and they blend themselves into the bureaucracy that just doesn't want to see change. I think you mentioned it in a previous conversation. You were talking about disruption being good, and I don't know if you were referring to Alan Savory, the rather challenged outsider in handling rotational grazing and field biology, but
Yeah.
he's very critical of our peer-reviewed culture.
Right. He has very good principles of intense, quick grazing, things like that. But I was talking about disrupting on a macro scale, the economic scale, the scale of how the swamp functions, the lobbyists and the special interest groups, to kind of break up this system where it needs to be broken and keep the best and throw out the worst. The system's not perfect.
So
I'm not. So you said, can we be saved? I'm not cynical on humanity. I'm hopeful, but there's less and less cause. We see a huge chasm. It used to be a divide. Now we're politically in the United States. It's a Grand Canyon of separation in philosophy on about every topic. We're not united. But the country has always been kind of that way, even to the point that we went to the Civil War, the country tore in half.
Yeah, and in between that, I mean, if your dad was a historian of sorts, in the late 1800s, we were the nastiness of politics was there back then.
Yeah.
It kind of ebbs and flows a little bit.
This great American experience has been very imperfect up to Civil War. Yes, my father was a U.S. history major, but our country comes with a lot of liberties, but a lot of dangers. We've had presidents assassinated, attempted assassinations. Theodore Roosevelt was shot. Reagan was shot. The Pope was shot. And so we live in that kind of world. President Trump was shot. He was saved by a hair. And so it's a disconcerting time as we break up the system. There's other forces also trying to break up the system and just cause disruption for disruption's sake, for their own interest, so they could go back to their basement and watch the world burn. They have given up on humanity. So we can't give up. We're obligated to fight for what we were handed and to keep maximum individual liberties. And that's why I'm so appreciative of President Trump. I don't know how he functioned. I see how he functions now. But I would oftentimes just go, how's he even going to wake up in the morning? And then I'd see him, and he's unaffected.
Yeah, he's genuinely, whether you like him or not, you genuinely just look at this. I mean, he's like an Energizer bunny.
He's someone who comes around very rarely in a century.
Yeah.
So he's extra special. If people would appreciate that and recognize, all things are spiritual to God. They should be to us, but he's. We think he was saved, and most people acknowledge. Most of his supporters are ardent God-believing people that know he was saved. So to what purpose? Let's see what purpose. Let's bash down some doors. Let him remake some of this stuff.
Not literally, of course.
Yeah,
figuratively.
No, on the system, he can. He can try, but he's going to face resistance every step of the way. That's not surprising.
Yeah.
We got the judicial system that is very much judge shopping. You find the right judge, and you can. They're attacking him at every point.
That's not new.
That's not new.
Been doing that for my entire adult life.
So we have this great wrestle in America still occurring, but how does that relate to our public lands?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it does play a big role in it.
Yeah.
And the problem is it's kind of like I used to try and explain to people about a TV show, is that I had to make it work, I had to sell ads. And it was unlike being in the tire business, because if I didn't sell a tire this week, I still had the tire to sell next week.
Whenever it snowed.
Yeah, but I mean, it was still a commodity. I could sell it next week. I'd sell it the week after.
Right.
In the advertising business, in the television business, the thing I had to sell was an ad. And once the show aired, if I didn't sell that ad, it wasn't coming back. It's just gone. The overhead was still there. It was just gone. But that, in a way, is kind of like the situation we're in as far as our public lands and everything. We've kicked it down the road so long, but you can't keep doing that, because the problem becomes exponentially more difficult to fix every time you delay it. If you put off pruning a forest for a year, you can come back in next year and get your controlled burn done and do it. You put it off for 20, you're at risk of trying to control burn because it's so bad.
The time for action is now, because we have the authorities and we have the knowledge, and we should not waste any time getting after these land improvement, habitat improvement projects. Mm-hmm. And we can do just so much more, make it so much better. We love these lands. We love them for all their natural beauty. We love the federal portfolio. That's where we had so many experiences growing up. But we will go after oil and gas on the federal lands, cleaner and better than any country on earth. We should mine and do all that better than any country on earth. And it's in our national interest to do that, and economic interest. Keep doing that. And we practice conservation better than anybody. So we can do, I believe there's nothing that we're not capable of. We can do better, but we need to strike right now and take care of the land. Not all of it. Just leave some of it wild. We're still going to have fires, but there's not a need to have these massive fires. I think California, they were talking about that for years.
Right.
And boy, this brush is getting tall like back in 1961.
Yeah.
And it was completely avoidable by using, removing biomass, whatever it takes.
Right.
Sheep, goats, thinning, just haul it off, chip it.
Even technology has changed now, because the biomass that used to just be a headache and you create a bonfire with it, you can now turn it into biochar, and you've got something that will improve soil around the world.
Creates jobs, equipment that has been developed.
Yeah. We
can build that stuff, and we can use it to chew that off. And if you don't haul it off or reduce it, it's going to burn, and it's going to take everything with it. Communities in shock that, we're far away from all that, 2 miles away, as the embers fly 2 miles away.
Right.
In neighborhoods that never thought they would be affected. This in the Rocky Mountain states, California being the worst example, but to Florida, which has terrible fires down there. Mm-hmm. There's a lot we can do to prevent that through good, solid land stewardship, land management.
And being a little bit innovative.
Yeah, very innovative.
Well, I'm glad you have hope for the world.
I haven't given up.
What hope do you have for your family? What you got? You've been married for what, about 40 years now?
Yeah, we've been married for 43 years.
Uh-huh.
My wife still chases me.
Oh, you're a lucky guy.
And we
I only get chased when she wants the car keys.
Just this week. So we're very proud of our children. They're better people than we are. We have 8 children. They're all married. 27 grandchildren. We don't know where the heck they came from. So we're
I
grateful.
need to
for our
loan you
family.
this book, Layne, if you don't know where they came from.
I need to buy a TV one of these days. but so we do it for them. We do it for our neighbors, but we want to leave them memories of the things that I experienced. Hard work, dang hard work. My father is a farmer and a home builder, and I had to work. I love sports, but I got to go to practice after work. I didn't get to go to morning and evening practice, just evening, because I had to be on the job site.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we will battle every bit for our families, and that's what gives me hope that my children seem to be getting it and rising up, and their generation is limitless. We need to be cheerleaders for them, but we need to be people of action that change pretty much everything that keeps America in decline. And people point to different factors. Is America in decline? If so, why? And we won't have time to address all those, but pick the issues that put us in decline. A lot of it has to do with family.
I don't disagree.
A lot of it has to do with food. I'll say that much for Bobby Kennedy. And a lot of it has to do with the concept of work, which President Trump works. He's dropped his kids off at the work site. They had no idea where they're going, and he would say, "Work the hell out of them, Sam." And so my father was like that. You work, and it's good for you.
It is.
Work is good, and we got to keep that going. And it relates to rural America and being exemplary, and the iron workers and all the people that build the great cities of America. That's important to me, as much as a flyover country in rural America. These great cities we have are also filled with special people.
So in your years of doing what you didn't want to do and or not imagining doing, working in the federal government, and you look back and you've got a grandchild who's just coming of age, what is the one part of wisdom that you want them to know? What is the one thing that you have observed in your years? And you're an observant guy. There's no doubt about that. What is the one thing that you want them to know?
Listen to your mom and dad. Just you tell it your story. Tell it yet another generation over and over. You repeat the truth. You tell them the truth. You teach them the truth, and you repeat it, and you repeat it. Yet another generation. And so that's the things you go tell. That's all I have to tell my posterity is go to work, listen to your parents.
Do you think that's part of our generation's failure, is that we didn't pick up the stories of our grandfathers and fathers? Of course, our fathers kept a lot of what happened in World War II bottled up inside.
There's still hope for our generation. We're the tail end of the baby boomers, but as I say, we have golden parents, this greatest generation.
Yeah.
And I say we are kind of a mediocre generation, but we were kind of cool also.
Yeah.
We've done some cool things. And so I think we could have been greater, but our time is not up. We still have time to push it over the line and keep this great dream and this great country and this great globe we live on, just to keep it peaceful and habitable.
Anything else that you want the people to know? I mean, I've already challenged you about what you're going to leave your grandkids. Anything that somebody coming across this, what is that one last message that you want to share with them?
Get involved at any level of politically. People hate politics. If you are not involved in politics, you will be governed by another man or woman's politics. Define your policies and your principles and get involved. If you sit by, the worst thing on earth is a fence sitter. Somebody's in the middle.
Yeah.
I have no use for them. They're worse than my opposition. Stand for something, get involved, and if you hate politics, too bad. You're obligated to get involved. I can't not be involved. I don't want to be governed by another person's politics. I don't want to be told much because I don't need to be told much. But I want the rule of law. And so I ascribe to all those things. Get involved. Stand.
Excellent. Layne, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I
Thanks, my
appreciate
good
your
friend.
taking the time
Appreciate
to
you,
let us
Chad.
come visit. And thank you for
Our
hosting.
deep, long friendship we've had. I love it.
Well, it sure
Like the-
feels like it, buddy.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, thank you, Chad.
All right.
I'm honored. Thank you.
All right. Listen, if you've enjoyed this podcast, I encourage you to subscribe, to share with your friends, get the word out. Let's get a lot of conversation going, because these are the important things that are going to happen in our future. So like, share, subscribe, and I will leave you with that. We'll see you next time on Corrective Lenses. All right.
Thank you, Chad.
All right.